Before sunrise, he walks alone beneath a lavender sky. Pouches of spices rustle beneath his cloak, and the clink of foreign coins echoes softly with each step. His world is roads and rivers, maps and markets. You know the king and the knight, but tonight, let me tell you the forgotten story of the merchant. A quiet soul who stitched together distant lands with trade, trust, and tales. The sky, in the earliest moments of morning, is neither dark nor light, but something in between, a soft blue hush that blankets the land. Along a winding dirt road, not far from a sleepy village, the merchant awakens in his covered wagon. It creaks with age, its wooden bones worn smooth by 1,000 miles of travel, its canvas top stained with soot, rain, and sun. He lies curled in woolen blankets, the scent of dried lavender tucked in his bedding mingling with the faint aroma of oiled leather and old paper. His breath puffs gently in the cool air as he stretches, bones quietly popping, the ache of travel resting in his joints like a familiar companion. Before even opening his eyes, he listens. A distant rooster crows. A pair of songbirds trill in nearby hedges. His donkey, Gaspard, huffs and rustles in the makeshift stable behind the wagon, waiting for breakfast and the road. These morning sounds are like a ritual, his daily hymn to the road ahead. With a soft grunt, the merchant rises and swings his legs down onto the wooden floorboards of his wagon. A small iron stove glows faintly from last night's fire, still warm. He stirs the embers and sets a pot of water to boil. While it simmers, he unrolls a cracked leather scroll case and spreads his maps across the small fold-out table. They are beautiful. These maps, faded parchment, curled at the corners, inked with winding rivers, crooked towns, and paths less traveled. Some were drawn by his own hand, notes scrawled in the margins. Safe spring here. Avoid this pass in winter. Good inn, fair prices. He traces his planned route with a fingertip. Today, he'll pass through rolling farmland, skirt the edge of a forest known for wild boars, and reach a mid-sized village by dusk. There, he hopes to sell dyed cloth, dried fruit, a bolt of imported silk, and jars of honey spiced with clove and orange peel. Breakfast is simple, flatbread from yesterday, a wedge of cheese, and a cup of mint tea made from herbs he gathered himself along the roadside. As he eats, he checks his supplies, wheels tight, tools sharpened, jars sealed, and no signs of rodents in the grain sack. He murmurs a quiet, "Thanks to the gods of the road," and closes the map. With practiced ease, he straps bundles to the back of the wagon, checks Gaspard's hooves, and cinches his harness. The donkey brays gently as if to say, "Again?" and the merchant chuckles under his breath. The road ahead stretches east, dappled with dew and cloaked in fog. He climbs onto the bench of the wagon, adjusts his wool cloak, and gently clicks his tongue. The wheels begin to turn. Gaspard plods forward. The wagon creaks, and so the day begins. The merchant, nameless to most who meet him, is a thread in the vast tapestry of medieval life. Not noble, not poor, not tied to one place, but always moving, guided by the roads, the maps, and the quiet rhythm of trade. He becomes both storyteller and listener, buyer and seller, traveler and friend. As the first rays of the sun pierce the mist, he disappears over a hill, wagon rumbling softly behind. By mid-morning, the road has gently climbed out of the mist. Dew glistens on the grass like 1,000 tiny lanterns, and the sun now peeks between the trees, casting long shadows across the dirt path. The wheels of the merchant's wagon press steadily onward, the rhythmic creak of wood and the soft clop of Gaspard's hooves keeping time like a slow, familiar song. The merchant's mind turns to the market ahead. He's visited this village many times before, and though faces change, the essence of the place never does. Stone cottages with thatched roofs, a central well, and the marketplace at its heart, pulsing with color, sound, and the scent of food, leather, and hay. As he approaches, the smell of baking bread reaches his nose, carried on the breeze like a memory. His stomach, never shy, growls in response. The market is already alive when he arrives. Wooden stalls are draped with linens, baskets of apples and turnips overflow onto the cobbled square, and artisans call out prices to passing villagers. There's a man sharpening knives on a foot-powered stone, a woman selling beeswax candles, and a barefoot boy leading a goat on a rope. He guides the wagon to a familiar spot beneath a chestnut tree. It's shaded and close to the main thoroughfare, where foot traffic is steady. With practiced ease, he sets up a foldable table, cloth draped over it, small crates placed atop, each containing his wares: dried fruits, spiced honey, tin spoons, bundles of dyed wool, and a few rare items, imported glass beads from the coast, and a bolt of pale blue silk, protected in oilcloth. He lays out his hand scales, small, simple devices made of brass and string. Beside them, weights, tiny discs of lead and iron, each carefully labeled, each nestled in a felt-lined box. He runs his fingers over them, remembering the time he spent apprenticing under an older merchant who taught him the art of fair trade. Weights and measures are sacred to a merchant. Trust is built on them. He has no interest in cheating. His reputation is worth more than any coin. Soon, a customer approaches, a baker's wife, her hands dusted in flour. She eyes the jars of honey and points to one. She hums in delight and trades him 2 loaves of rye bread and a few copper pennies. A fair deal. They nod in mutual respect. Next, a farmer inspects the wool. Together, they weigh it against iron discs, carefully checking the balance. The merchant explains where the wool came from, dyed with crushed berries and boiled in oak bark to fix the color. The farmer runs his fingers over the fabric and decides to buy enough for his wife to sew a new winter cloak. As the morning passes, the table fills with conversations. A curious child asks how the honey gets its golden glow. A carpenter barters for cloves in exchange for sharpening the merchant's small hand axe. There's laughter, small talk, and shared stories of weather, harvest, and distant towns. Though coins exchange hands, much of the trade is still barter. A merchant must know the worth of everything, not just in money, but in need. What does a silversmith need more than silver today? Perhaps a sour for aching joints. Or a story about a far-off fair where silver cups were traded for peacock feathers. At the heart of it all is balance, not just of weights on the scale, but of honesty, relationships, and timing. As the sun reaches its peak, the merchant wipes his brow and takes a moment to sip cool water from a flask. The chestnut tree provides dappled shade. A gentle breeze rustles the leaves, and the sounds of the market continue. A symphony of trade, laughter, and human connection that has echoed through the centuries. He does not sell out completely, nor does he expect to, but his pockets are heavier and his pack lighter. He has traded well today. By early afternoon, crowd begins to thin. He packs his goods with care, folding the cloth, corking the jars, counting his weights. Nothing is rushed. He knows that order now makes travel easier later. Before he leaves, the merchant stops at the nearby bakery and trades a small pouch of saffron, rare and precious, for 2 sweet rolls dusted with cinnamon, a treat for the road. With a final glance at the bustling square, now beginning to quiet, he returns to the wagon. Gaspard greets him with a snort. He climbs aboard, tips his cap to the blacksmith polishing his anvil nearby, and turns the wagon back toward the open road. The market fades behind him, and with it the chorus of voices and clinking coins. But the weight of the morning's work remains, not in burden, but in memory, gently settled like gold dust at the bottom of a pouch. The road narrows after the village, shifting from cobblestones to a rutted earthen path lined with overgrown hedges and wildflowers. Tall trees rise like ancient watchmen, their branches interlacing above to form a gentle green tunnel. Dappled sunlight spills onto the track, flickering with each rustling breeze, and the forest hums with quiet life. Chirping crickets, the occasional flutter of wings, the soft rustle of unseen paws. The merchant leans back on the creaking bench of the wagon, chewing slowly on the last of the sweet roll he'd traded for at the market. A touch of cinnamon lingers on his tongue, mingling with the earthy scent of moss and leaves. The hum of bees drifts lazily through the air. Gaspard, his loyal mule, plods ahead with steady resolve, tail swishing now and again to chase off a persistent fly. The road may be uneven, but the wagon glides along as smoothly as it can. Every jostle is familiar to the merchant, every bump a rhythm he's known for years. This stretch of road is long and lonely, but it is not without its charm. Patches of mushrooms sprout along the base of trees, and bright blue dragonflies skim the surface of puddles that haven't yet dried from the morning's dew. Here, the merchant's thoughts drift. He remembers old encounters, moments stitched into the patchwork quilt of years spent traveling. A runaway piglet darting into his path, chased by giggling children. A hermit who once shared warm chestnut soup and stories of stars. A fallen tree that blocked the way for 2 days, during which he played dice with a band of friendly monks also delayed on their pilgrimage. The road always surprises. Around a bend, the stillness shifts. Ahead, just off the path, he spots a figure, an old man in a hooded cloak, sitting on a rock beneath an ash tree, holding a crooked walking stick. The merchant slows the wagon and raises a hand in greeting. The old man returns the gesture with a slow nod, his face weathered like bark, eyes sharp and kind. "Fine day for travel," the merchant calls. "A better day to trade stories," the old man replies. The merchant chuckles. He pulls Gaspard to a halt and climbs down. They speak for a few minutes. The old man is a former woodcarver, now wandering between villages. He's carved a small charm from rowan wood, shaped like a fox, and offers it in trade for a handful of dried cherries. The merchant agrees, delighted. Such charms, they say, ward off misfortune. As they part, the old man offers a warning. 2 miles ahead, the stream's swollen. Best cross upstream where the rocks rise like stepping stones. The merchant nods his thanks. Local knowledge is worth more than gold. Soon the forest deepens. The path narrows further, swallowed by tall ferns and undergrowth. The sounds grow softer but richer, the creak of trees in the breeze, the distant hoot of an owl, though the sun still shines. The air is cooler, here, damp, ancient, He passes a stone shrine nestled among the roots of a massive oak. A weathered statue of a saint stands vigil, moss creeping over its robe. The merchant bows his head briefly, placing a coin at the base, an offering for safe passage. A sudden flutter of wings startles Gaspard, but the mule is used to such things. A flock of pigeons bursts from the trees and disappears overhead like wind-blown leaves. Rounding another bend, the merchant sees what the old man had warned of, a stream cutting across the road, wider and deeper than he remembers. The usual crossing is flooded, but true to the warning, a narrow footpath branches off, leading to higher ground where the rocks rise like steps across the water. He guides the wagon carefully, one wheel at a time. The water splashes against the wheels but never rises high enough to cause worry. He hums softly, an old traveling song, something about stars and safe roads, and the tune carries over the stream, like a lullaby. Beyond the crossing, the forest begins to thin. Sunlight returns in greater patches, and soon the path widens once again. The merchant stops to let Gaspard drink from a clear pool, fed by a gentle trickle of spring water. He kneels nearby, splashing cool water on his face, savoring the moment. The road behind him has been kind. He eats a simple lunch, some dried meat, a heel of bread, and the last of the cheese from a village 2 days past. He sits on a mossy stone, legs stretched out, hat tipped forward. For a few minutes, he lets his eyes close. The forest whispers its lullaby, the breeze weaving through branches, as if nature itself were soothing him to rest. Only a merchant would nap with one ear open. As the merchant and his faithful mule, Gaspard, continue down the newly widened path, the air begins to shift. It starts as a subtle stillness. The birdsong grows quieter. The leaves no longer dance playfully on the breeze, they stiffen, as if waiting. The sky, once a gentle blue, has taken on a dull grey hue that creeps in from the horizon like ink spilled across parchment. The merchant glances upward. He knows these signs well. Rain, perhaps not a passing drizzle, but a storm with weight to it. He can feel it in the drop of pressure behind his ears, and in the way the wind now whistles low and steady, like a kettle just beginning to boil. He reaches beneath the wagon seat and pulls out a waxed cloak, draping it across his shoulders. "Let's pick up the pace, old friend," he murmurs to Gaspard, clicking his tongue. The mule flicks his ears but obliges, trotting with a bit more urgency. As they press onward, the sky darkens further. Thunder rumbles. Somewhere in the distance, not loud yet, but deep and rolling, like a cart moving through gravel far away. Birds take flight in flocks, disappearing into the trees. A squirrel darts across the road, chattering nervously as it climbs into the thick canopy. The merchant keeps his eyes open for shelter. He knows from past travels there's an old chapel ruin somewhere in this stretch of woods, a place where the roof may still hold, where many a traveller has waited out the rain with prayer and a warm fire. If memory serves, it's another half-mile ahead, tucked just off a side path marked by a leaning stone cross. The first drops begin to fall, soft, cold, and patient, like a warning. A sprinkle against the waxed cloth, a few gentle taps on the wooden wagon roof. Then more and more. The sky opens. Rain sheets down in silver curtains, soaking the earth in minutes. Mud splashes up with each turn of the wheels. The road becomes slick and puddled. Gaspard lowers his head and pushes on through the storm, his ears flattening against the downpour. And there, through the veil of rain, the merchant sees it, the stone cross, tilted and moss-covered, its arms worn and softened by time. He tugs the reins gently, guiding Gaspard onto the narrow path that leads to the ruins. The trail is overgrown but still passable. Thick hedges brush against the wagon as they make their way through. Then, through the trees, the chapel appears. A broken bell tower rises like a jagged tooth against the storm-dark sky. The chapel itself is a skeleton of stone and ivy, its wooden door long gone, but part of the roof still holds. Smoke-blackened stones mark where fires have burned before. It may not be a cozy inn, but to a merchant caught in a storm, it is a palace. He leads the wagon under the sheltering wall and unyokes Gaspard. The mule finds a dry corner and begins nibbling on a patch of hay left behind by some previous traveller. The merchant lays out a wool blanket and builds a small fire using dry twigs from beneath the wagon seat and a bit of pitch kept for just such a moment. The fire sputters, then catches. Warmth blooms in the ruined chapel. The orange light flickers across the damp stone walls, and the sound of the rain becomes a soft, steady drumbeat on the slate roof above. The merchant removes his cloak and hangs it near the fire to dry. He kneels beside Gaspard, checking the mule's hooves for any stones or cuts. Then, from a leather pouch, he draws out a small tin of boiled oats, mixed with dried apple slices. A treat for them both. The meal is humble, but in the glow of the fire, with rain washing the world clean just beyond the walls, it tastes like comfort. He stretches out on his blanket, eyes half-lidded, listening to the storm. It's in these moments that he feels most connected to the road, not during the bright markets or cheerful trades, but here, alone with the sound of rain and the scent of wet earth and smoke. These are the hours where thoughts settle, where time slows. He reaches into his satchel and pulls out a journal, leather-bound and well-worn. With a stub of charcoal, he scribbles a few notes. Storm near Ashcross. Found the old chapel again. Still standing. Carved fox charm keeps dry. May trade it for something sweet in the next town. Gaspard in good spirits. He signs with a flourish and tucks the book away. The thunder rolls once more, but more distant now. The storm is passing. Rain softens into drizzle. The evening draws near, painting the wet world in shades of blue and violet. Mist curls at the base of the trees. A single ray of sun breaks through the clouds, catching on the chapel's stone wall like a promise. The merchant sighs contentedly and closes his eyes. Tomorrow, the road will call again. The ruined chapel glows in the early light, dappled with golden sunbeams piercing through a delicate morning mist. Drops of rain still cling to the ivy-covered walls, and the trees shimmer as though freshly washed. The forest seems quieter after the storm, hushed as if grateful. The merchant wakes slowly, stretching on his wool blanket, his body stiff but rested. Gaspard munches lazily on the remnants of dried hay. The little fire has long gone out, leaving behind a ring of cold ash and a faint scent of smoke. It's time to move on. The merchant straps his satchel back over his shoulder, checks the wagon's contents, and carefully reins Gaspard back onto the muddy trail. Though the road is soft beneath the wagon's wheels, the sun is rising higher, promising a dry and steady day. Today's journey will bring them to a river crossing, the only way forward toward the next town. There's no bridge here, only a flat-bottomed ferry pulled slowly across the water by. thick ropes fastened on either side of the wide river, and, of course, there's the toll-keeper. Every merchant knows this crossing well. The path narrows as the trees thin, and soon the sound of rushing water greets the merchant's ears. Birds call across the banks, and frogs croak from the reeds. The scent of wet grass and river mud rises in the warming air. At last, the river comes into view. It's a wide body of water, slow-moving, glistening under the morning sun. Water weeds drift near the banks, and dragonflies buzz lazily above the surface. The ferry waits on the far side, a flat wooden platform moored to a post, with a small shelter nearby where the toll-keeper makes his station. The merchant lifts a brass horn hanging from a post and gives it 2 short blasts. A figure stirs on the opposite shore. The toll-keeper, wrapped in a faded cloak and wearing a broad hat that droops slightly at the corners, emerges from his shelter. Without hurry, he walks down to the ropes and begins to pull the ferry across the water using a large creaking winch. It's slow, rhythmic work. The ferry groans and sways, parting the water like a barge. The merchant waits patiently. He uses the moment to feed Gaspard a few slices of carrot from his pocket and stretches his legs. He watches as a pair of ducks glide by, unconcerned with human affairs. This crossing, for all its delays, always brings a certain stillness with it, a moment between places. Finally, the ferry grinds to the near bank. The toll-keeper nods, saying little. He's a quiet man, known for his silence and sharp memory. He recognizes most travelers by face and remembers who paid what and when. The merchant drives the wagon aboard, guiding Gaspard carefully onto the wooden deck. The ferry rocks slightly under the weight but holds firm. Once on board, the toll-keeper latches the gate and begins turning the winch in reverse, dragging the ferry slowly across the river again. The journey takes time, perhaps 15 minutes. There is no wind, only the sound of pulleys creaking, ropes tightening, and water lapping against the boards. Midway across, the toll-keeper finally speaks. "You came through last spring," he says, voice rough like gravel. "Wagon load of dyes and ink pots, traded with Brother Alaric at the Abbey." The merchant smiles. "Eh? And I remember you charged me double when the rope snapped mid-crossing." The toll-keeper chuckles softly. "That rope was older than the king himself. We've since replaced it." "Shame," the merchant replies with a grin. "I quite like the suspense." The 2 men share a quiet laugh. As they near the opposite bank, the toll-keeper gestures toward a rusted iron coffer mounted by the exit. A sign above it reads, "1 silver penny for passage, 2 if with cart or mule." The merchant opens his purse, already prepared, and drops 2 silver coins into the coffer. They gasps. 2 silver coins into the coffer, clink loudly, echoing in the still morning air. He tips his hat in thanks. The ferry touches shore with a wooden thud, and the toll-keeper unlatches the gate. The merchant urges Gaspard forward, wheels rolling back onto solid earth. The path on this side of the river is wider, sunlit, and lined with wildflowers swaying in the breeze. Before he leaves, the merchant turns back to the toll-keeper. Still planning that trip to St. Michel, the toll-keeper shrugs. "Maybe this autumn, if the river behaves." The merchant nods knowingly and gives a final wave. With that, he's off again. Hooves clicking on dry dirt, wagon creaking gently, the smell of the river fading behind him as a new road unfolds ahead. Another small hurdle passed. Another step closer to the next market town, the next trade, the next warm meal and fire, the journey continues. The road after the river widens, firm underfoot and lined with rows of wild chamomile, their tiny white blossoms bobbing gently in the breeze. Birds chirp high in the trees, and the air is warm with the sweet scent of sun-drenched leaves and old earth. Gaspard trots steadily, no longer hindered by mud or rain. The wagon creaks rhythmically, a familiar sound that mingles with the distant toll of church bells carried on the wind. It means one thing: the town is near. Soon, the tree line breaks, and a patchwork of thatched roofs and timber-framed buildings appears on the horizon. A stone wall surrounds the town, modest in height, with ivy creeping along its flanks and moss nestled between each aging block. Just beyond the gates, the merchant sees the tops of colourful market stalls and fluttering cloth banners swaying gently above the square. This is Marley, a small but lively market town known for its skilled potters, fresh honeycombs, and excellent black bread. A place where merchants are always welcome. As he approaches the gate, 2 town guards step forward lazily, more out of routine than suspicion. They wear faded tunics bearing the town's crest, a stag leaping beneath a crescent moon, and carry short spears. One of them squints. Name and trade. The merchant smiles. Etienne, travelling merchant, cloth, needles, cones and glass. The guard nods and steps aside. Market's in full swing. Best find a stall before they're all taken. Inside, the cobbled streets are buzzing. Children dart between carts, their hands sticky from toffee apples. A pair of nuns haggle over beeswax candles. Blacksmiths, tanners and brewers display their wares proudly beneath striped canopies, calling out prices with bold voices. The town square, shaded by a pair of ancient oaks, is alive with noise and movement. Etienne finds a space near the southern edge of the square, just wide enough to park his wagon and unfurl a length of blue canvas to shade his goods. He sets up with practiced ease, bolts of woolen fabric laid neatly in rows, carved bone combs displayed in a lacquered box, little hand mirrors with polished bronze faces catching the light. Gaspard is tied nearby, munching on a bundle of hay offered by a friendly baker. The hours pass in a pleasant hum of activity. Locals come and go, some familiar, some new. A young seamstress selects a length of green linen. A visiting noblewoman's steward inspects a carved whistle. 2 boys, no older than 10, marvel at the tiny mirror until their mother scolds them back to her side. There's bartering, laughter, and even a brief scuffle between rival sausage vendors that ends with flying pork and a chorus of jeers. Etienne doesn't mind. It's all part of the rhythm. He trades cloth for a sack of barley, sells a mirror for 3 pennies, and earns a warm loaf in exchange for a broken pair of spectacles he hadn't expected anyone to want. Town's charm lies not only in profit, but in its people, in the way stories are shared, gossip traded, and kindness shown in simple ways. Later, as the sun begins to dip, golden light floods the square. The shadows grow longer, the calls from vendors more urgent, and the clink of coins more frequent as buyers make their final rounds before the evening meal. Etienne begins to pack his wares, but not before treating himself to a reward, a mug of cider from the cooper's stall, crisp and tart with just the right sweetness. He sits on the edge of his wagon, sipping slowly, watching as the square begins to quiet. The children have gone home. The banners droop in the still air. Candles flicker to life behind wooden shutters. The town is settling in for the night. As he finishes his drink, a familiar face approaches, a wrinkled old tanner named Audric, with whom Etienne has traded off and on for years. "You'll be in St. Gabriel by week's end?" Audric asks. "If the weather holds," Etienne replies. "I have some needles to deliver to the Priory there." Audric nods. "Mind the western road. Bandits took a wagon just last fortnight. It'll keep to the merchant trail," Etienne assures him. Slower, but safer. They exchange a firm handshake. By nightfall, Etienne has packed his goods, rubbed Gaspard down with a cloth, and made arrangements to sleep in the hayloft above the livery stable. Safe, dry, and warm. From the loft window, he watches as the market square fades into darkness, the last candles flickering out like stars at the end of their vigil. In the quiet of the hay, he lays back, arms crossed behind his head, the scent of straw and smoke in the air. Tomorrow, the road calls again. But tonight, he sleeps beneath the beams of an old barn, heart full, body tired, dreams sweet with the promise of coin, kindness, and another stretch of open path. The day's noise has softened into stillness. Lanterns glow faintly behind thick mullioned glass. The smell of roast meat and wood smoke curls through the air, mingling with the rich scent of damp earth and fading summer. Etienne, the merchant, steps down from the hayloft after a short rest and gives Gaspard a gentle pat. The old horse, well fed and brushed, huffs contentedly and closes his eyes. It's the perfect hour to visit the tavern. The Boar's Tooth Inn stands at the edge of the square, its sign swinging gently in the breeze, depicting a wild boar mid-charge, tusks glinting silver in the moonlight. The building leans slightly to one side, as if drowsy from decades of ale-soaked evenings, but its heavy beams and thick stone hearth promise warmth and welcome. Inside, the room hums with quiet laughter and the low murmur of conversation. A fire crackles in the great hearth, casting flickering shadows on the low ceiling. Spoons clink. Against bowls, tankards knock gently together, and somewhere in the corner, a young bard plucks a quiet tune on a battered lute. Etienne finds a seat near the fire where the heat reaches his travel-worn boots. The innkeeper, a stout woman with strong arms and a kind smile, brings him a trencher of rabbit stew and a mug of dark ale. It is, as always, the best stew he's had all week. He eats slowly, savoring the comfort of hot food and a seat that doesn't sway like a wagon. Around him, the tavern fills with familiar types. A tired washerwoman still in her apron, two apprentices comparing bruises from their day's work, and a thin man in clerical robes nursing a small cup of wine. And then there are the travellers, Etienne's kindred. A spice seller from the south recounts his misadventure with a dishonest mayor who tried to pay him in chickens. A Flemish cloth merchant, younger than most, boasts of a deal he made with a noblewoman, though the sparkle in his eyes suggests the trade involved more than fabric. Etienne chuckles along, adding a tale of his own, of the time a goose chased him through a village for half a mile, mistaking the shiny buttons in his basket for corn. Laughter bubbles up around the fire. Strangers become companions. For all the miles between them, every merchant shares the same truths: the ache of the road, the joy of a good deal, the danger of thieves, and the small, quiet magic of watching someone smile over a new comb, or clasp a piece of dyed cloth to their chest like treasure. After the meal, the tavern slowly empties. Locals drift home. The fire dies low, but Etienne lingers. He turns to the bard. "Do you know the tune, 'The Wind on the Heather'?" The young man nods and begins to play, soft and slow, The melody is simple, ancient. It carries the scent of moors and memories, of long roads behind and longer roads ahead. Etienne listens with closed eyes. When the last note fades, he thanks the bard and presses a copper penny into his hand. "Play it again tomorrow," he says, "if the rain holds off." The merchant returns to the livery, walking slowly through the cobbled streets, past closed shutters and moonlit chimneys. The town is quiet now, wrapped in its dreams. Back in the hayloft, Gaspard shifts below, content in his rest. Etienne lays down again in his nest of straw. His limbs are heavy, his belly warm, his mind filled with stories and song. Tomorrow, there will be more miles, but tonight, there is stillness and peace. Morning stirs gently. A soft breeze rustles the straw in the loft as a pale shaft of sunlight creeps in through a high wooden slat. Below, Gaspard stamps his hoof and lets out a low nicker, eager to begin again. The scent of oats and wood smoke clings to the stable walls, mingling with the clean, dewy breath of the new day. Etienne rises slowly, stretching away the stiffness of sleep. He folds his woolen blanket, brushes hay from his tunic, and reaches for his boots. Outside, the world is waking. A small boy sweeps the inn's threshold. A baker slides flat, loaves into a glowing oven. Church bells in the distance chime softly, their rhythm slower than a market bell, more like a whispered blessing. Today's journey is a quieter one. St. Gabriel Priory lies beyond the wooded hills, nestled along a quiet bend in the river. It's a half-day's ride if the roads are kind. Not a place of commerce, not truly, but Etienne has long learned that not all trades involve coin. The road begins with a gentle slope, the cobblestones of the town giving way to packed earth. Dust stirs beneath Gaspard's hooves as they pass beyond the gates and into the wide green world. The air is clean. Birds call from the trees overhead, finches and blackbirds and the slow-throated song of a wood pigeon. Sunlight dapples through the branches, painting gold patches onto the road. Etienne hums a tune from the night before. In his cart, neatly bundled, are the small gifts he carries for the brothers of the Priory: beeswax candles, a pot of saffron, ink powder wrapped in waxed cloth, and a new quill knife he traded from a smith 2 towns past. Simple things, but treasured in a place where monks write more than they buy. He carries no expectation of silver in return. His visits to the Priory are driven by something older than profit. Respect, perhaps, or a longing for quiet. The monks always offer bread, a place to rest, and the comfort of voices that don't seek bargains. The road climbs. Wildflowers sway along the edge. Chicory, yarrow, and foxglove in tall pink towers. Bees drift lazily from bloom to bloom. Etienne passes an old shepherd leading a flock of thin-necked sheep, their bells tinkling gently like wind chimes in motion. "Safe travels, merchant," the shepherd calls. "And to you, good sir," Etienne replies. A bend in the road reveals the first glimpse of the Priory. Its pale stone walls rise modestly from the hillside, framed by an orchard and a scattering of grazing goats. The slate roof glints in the sun, and a solitary bell tower rises above it all, narrow and serene. Gaspard picks up his pace, sensing the journey's end. At the gate, a monk in a brown habit waves them forward. His face is lined but kind, with the sort of eyes that seem to see right through hurry. "Brother Matthias," Etienne says, smiling. You haven't aged a day. That's what you always say. The monk replies with a grin. And yet, I feel it in my knees every winter. They embrace warmly. Etienne is led inside. The priory is still and clean. Bees hum in the herb garden. A novice draws water from the well. Nearby, an older monk patiently teaches a young boy to shape letters on a wax tablet, his voice barely above a whisper. Etienne delivers the goods and is offered, in return, a seat in the shaded cloister and a bowl of fresh goat cheese with soft brown bread. He accepts gratefully, savoring the quiet. Stay the night, Matthias offers. Not tonight, Etienne says, but a rest, yes. He closes his eyes for a while in the cloister, listening to the soft hush of sandals on stone and the rustling leaves overhead. He could stay here for days, weeks perhaps, but the road calls, always. By mid-afternoon, he rises. Brother Matthias walks him back to the gate and presses into his hand a small parchment scroll tied with twine. A prayer, he says simply, for your journey. Etienne nods, his throat too full for words. He tucks the scroll safely into his satchel, climbs up beside Gaspard, and turns the cart back to the road. The priory shrinks behind him, framed in green and gold. He says nothing for many miles, letting the silence stretch and settle around him. Not every trade brings coin. Some bring peace. The sky is darkening, low, drifting clouds sweep across the hilltops, casting long, restless shadows over the winding ridge road. The wind has changed, no longer soft and warm, but dry and cool, the kind that carries the scent of mossy stone and distant smoke. Gaspard's ears twitch at every gust. Etienne senses it too. A shift in the air. He tightens the strap on his satchel and rests a steady hand on the reins. The ridge ahead is narrow, flanked by rocky slopes and tangled woods on one side, and a steep drop on the other. Few travelers choose this path, but it's the quickest route to the next market town, and with the priory now behind him, he hopes to reach it by nightfall. The wind whistles louder as they climb. The fields lie like rumpled green quilts, dotted with grazing cattle and distant plumes of chimney smoke. Up here, though, all is quiet. Even the birds seem to have taken shelter. A crow calls harshly from a bare branch, then flies, off with a flap of black wings. Etienne narrows his eyes. The ridge is no place for distraction. He remembers old tales told by fellow merchants, stories of bandits hiding in the brush, waiting for carts like his. He's never encountered them before, but he's heard enough to know what signs to watch for. Broken branches where none should be, unnatural stillness in the underbrush, or a sudden stone rolled onto the path. Gaspard stops, not of his own accord. He was halted. A rope pulled tight across the road between two trees. Etienne freezes. From the brush ahead, two men step into view. Both wear patched cloaks and carry short blades at their belts. Their faces are thin and weary, and their boots are caked with ridge mud. One is younger, with wild eyes and a half-healed scar on his cheek. The other is older, calmer, but no less dangerous. Evening, traveler. Evening, traveler. Evening, Etienne replies, his voice even. Long road, isn't it? The man continues, gesturing lazily. Bit lonely up here. Etienne says nothing. The younger one circles the cart, eyeing the bundles. Merchant, are you? He asks. Got anything worth sharing? Etienne offers a faint smile. though his heart pounds in his chest. "Only bolts of wool and some worn-out boots," he says calmly. "Nothing that would interest clever men like yourselves." The older man raises an eyebrow. "Modest." "That's good, but we've learned to check for ourselves." The older man raises an eyebrow. "Modest. That's good, but we've learned to check for ourselves." Etienne glances toward the pack at his feet. He knows it contains a small purse with silver pennies and the last few precious items, a brass belt buckle, some dried figs, and 2 pieces of saffron. But more than that, he thinks of the parchment scroll from Brother Matthias, the simple prayer given in silence. The younger thief reaches for the cart. Gaspard snorts, shifting his weight. The movement startles the younger man, who steps back with a curse. "I wouldn't," Etienne says quietly. "This horse has seen more battles than both of you put together, and I haven't fed him yet today." A long pause. The wind moans through the ridge trees. The older man looks at Etienne for a moment longer, then lifts a hand. "We don't want trouble," he says. "But hard times, you understand. Harvest's been bad. No work in the valley." Etienne nods slowly. "I understand." He reaches into the front of the cart, not to the coin purse, but to a sack beside it. From within, he pulls out a cloth bundle. Inside, a small loaf of rye bread, a wedge of goat cheese, and a strip of smoked fish from the Priory. He hands it to the older man. "For your supper," he says. The man takes it slowly. His eyes flicker with something unexpected. Shame maybe, or memory. The younger one scowls. "We should have taken more." "No," the older man interrupts. "This is enough." He nods to Etienne. "Travel safe." Without another word, they vanish into the trees, the rope across the road falling limp behind them. Etienne waits a moment. Then another. Only the wind remains. He clicks his tongue, and Gaspard moves forward once more. The road is still narrow, still steep, still flanked by dark woods and the whisper of risk. But the air feels lighter now. Etienne doesn't look back. He simply reaches into his satchel and touches the little scroll, the one with the monk's prayer tied with twine, and keeps moving forward. The first stars blink into the sky. Etienne rides with a weariness he can feel in his bones. Gaspard's hooves fall soft on the worn dirt road, now winding through gentler hills. The wind has calmed, and the scent of evening firewood and wild thyme drifts faintly through the air. In the distance, flickering lanterns mark the edge of the town. Not a grand city, just a small village nestled beside the slow-running River Bell. A place of cobbled lanes, shuttered homes, and low thatched roofs. The glow of oil lamps spills from cottage windows. Somewhere, a dog barks. A woman's voice calls out from a doorway, beckoning a child indoors. Etienne lets out a slow breath. Home. He pulls the cart past a stone marker, etched with a weathered coat of arms, and follows the main lane. A few villagers glance his way, but offer only tired nods. They've seen merchants before. Some pass through, some stay a night, some vanish into the dark roads, and are never seen again. The village square is quiet, save for the gentle bubbling of a public fountain at its center. A statue of Saint Gregoire stands above it, hand raised in silent blessing. Etienne stops beside the well and stretches his legs. Gaspard shakes out his mane and lowers his head to drink. The innkeeper's lantern swings gently from its iron hook. A carved wooden sign, "The Sleeping Fox," creaks in the breeze. The door opens before Etienne knocks. Warm light pours out, along with the smell of onion soup and sweet cider. "Evening, traveller," says the innkeeper, a round-faced woman with rosy cheeks. "Late on the road, are you?" Etienne smiles, later than I meant to be. She gestures to the hearth. "There's stew by the fire and a cot upstairs. Your horse'll find hay in the stable, no charge till morning." He nods in thanks and leads Gaspard to the back. The stable is warm and dry, with soft straw and the sound of another horse gently snoring in the next stall. Etienne rubs Gaspard's nose, gives him a final apple, and whispers, "Rest well, friend." Inside the inn, all is quiet. Two old men play a slow game of draughts in the corner, and a young woman hums as she wipes down mugs behind the counter. Etienne lowers himself into a chair near the fire. The stew is hard and thick, and he eats without hurry, savoring each bite. Not because it's better than the Priory meal, but because this one comes with the soft murmur of voices, the glow of the hearth, and the gentle clink of spoon against bowl. His eyes grow heavy. From his satchel, he retrieves the scroll brother Matthias gave him. The parchment is simple. On it is written only a short prayer in Latin, in careful, sloping hand. Etienne reads it once, then again, not aloud, just enough to remember the words, to carry them forward. The fire crackles low. Outside, the wind has settled. The stars stretch across the sky in a river of silver. Somewhere in the hills, a fox calls out high and lonely. Etienne finishes the last of his cider, thanks the innkeeper, and climbs the stairs. His room is small, with a single bed, a wooden chest, and a shuttered window. He opens it, cool air drifts in. Far below, the lanterns of the village flicker like tiny stars in the earthly sky. He undresses slowly, places his satchel beneath the bed, tucks the scroll under his pillow, and lies back, not on a merchant's cart, or in a priory cell, or in the cold woods, but in a bed with sheets that smell of lavender and hearth smoke. Etienne closes his eyes. Tomorrow, the journey will continue. There will be more roads, more tolls, more faces, and stories and stops along the way. But tonight, he is still, and for the first time in days, he sleeps, not with one eye open, not with a hand on his belt pouch, but deeply as the river beside the town, as the monks in their cloisters, as the farmers in their fields, as the farmers in their fields. Stars above the windy ridge. The lanterns flicker once, then fade.